play a game?
Why, yes, I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky at Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for tuning in and checking it out. This is, even though it's Shane Plays, I do play a lot of games, tabletop, RPG, video, and otherwise. But Shane Plays is also just when I play, when I get geeky. And today we'll be talking about movies and comic books, I guess. But specifically, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. We're going to be talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League, which of course released recently on HBO Max. And to join me back in November of 2017, so do the wavy little woo, like where you go back in time on the old sitcoms. And Michael Brown, comedian Michael Brown, commentator, all-around cool, geeky, fun guy.
Impressionist.
Impressionist, the head of Orson Welles and other things. Join me in November of 2017 to talk about the Justice League theatrical release. And we also talked about the DCEU overall. Not the MCU, but, which is Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the DC Extended Universe, which Justice League was supposed to be the big tent pole and all that. And even though it made gobs of money, it's considered underperforming because it didn't hit where they were expecting. So we were discussing, what do we think is going to happen with the DCEU? Now, Michael is joining by phone, but he's got like one of the best voices ever. So I think it still sounds pretty darn good. But if you notice that the quality on Michael's end is off just a little bit, you would not believe the yeoman's effort that Michael has made with both of us having technical problems to be a part of this. So I still think it's going to sound pretty good. But if you hear a little bit of audio issues, cut the man some slack. He climbed Mount Everest to be here. Philosophically. So, Michael, welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you.
How the heck have you been? I know that as you do a lot of different things, but one of your main things, bread and butter, is a stand-up comedian, and you've been unable to ply your craft for a while because of COVID.
Yeah, man. The last show I performed in was Valentine's Day weekend of 2020.
Wow, February 2020 is the last time you got to get on stage and tear it up. So I bet you're gasping you're gasping to get back on stage, aren't you?
I would very much like to get back on stage, and not for nothing, I was kind of shifting my act a little bit. I mean, I always did impressions in my act, but I started doing a situation where I would make up a list called a voice menu.
Okay.
And I would bring someone up from the crowd, and they would look at the voice menu, and they would pick what silly voice I would do, and then I would read something in that voice. And not for nothing, man, no two shows are ever alike.
Right. In a good way.
In a great way.
Yeah.
Because different people pick different impressions. Maybe somebody wants to hear Dr. Phil. Or maybe somebody wants to hear Peter Griffin,
You never know. And of course
you never know.
Yeah. Now, as part of that, of your act, I know you do a dead-on Orson Welles. And also, visually, you can really make yourself look like Orson Welles. But back in the day, now I'm not saying this is what your comedy is now, but back in the day, you could invoke Chris Farley immediately. So do you still do any tributes to Chris Farley? Is that part of your act?
Chris has been on the voice menu, but yeah, if I'm just doing my act.
Right.
Absolutely. I'll do Farley on stage.
Yeah. And like I said, you're not just up there pretending to be Chris Farley. You got your own thing going on. But I know, because you've been doing stand-up.
Well, right. I have my own joke.
Yeah.
That I do as Farley. And not for nothing, that is, I've been a stand-up comedian for over 16 years.
Right.
That is literally one of the first things I ever did on stage.
Right.
Which was me coming. I was walking out of Spencer's in the mall, and somebody came out of Payless Shoes, like 2 stores down, and they audibly commented on how much they thought I looked like Chris Farley. So that's the kind of story I tell about it.
Right.
You know?
Well, I certainly, I hope that you're doing your voice menu routine sooner rather than later. You know, it does look like we're turning a corner, so I hope that I hope you get up there soon, because it's in your bones, it's in your DNA. You want to get up there on stage. So
thank you very much.
Yeah, and give me an update when you're out there plying that craft again. So let's talk. You and I, our common interest that we've known each other for I don't even know how long now started over comics. So of course we like to talk comics and comic movies and TV shows and all that stuff. And, as I mentioned earlier, you came on and we talked about the theatrical release of Zack Snyder, or of not Zack Snyder's Justice League, but Justice League, which Zack Snyder had done quite a bit of it. He had a personal tragedy. He left the movie, and they brought in, if by all accounts, Joss Whedon came in on a week's notice and got the movie out into theaters. And it was a much different movie that he put out rather than what Zack Snyder had intended. And I don't think anybody, even though everybody that, follows this kind of stuff, and including you and I, had talked on that previous episode, which I'll link in the show notes. People go to shaneplays.com, and I'll have that previous discussion about the Justice League release in 2017 with Mike in the show notes, if you want to compare the two. But you and I were like, well, it's fairly substantially different, but I don't think even, I went back and listened to it this week to get ready for this discussion today, and I don't think either of us grasped how much different it was. I mean, it was very different. I think we thought at the time that 45 minutes or something had been left on the cutting room floor, which was far short of, we got a 2-hour, we have a 4-hour cut in the Snyder cut.
Yeah. Joss
Whedon's version was 2 hours, and it had a lot of scenes that he filmed to replace stuff that Zack Snyder did. So, you almost might say that Zack Snyder's version has 2.5 hours more as far as just scene wise.
Absolutely.
So, I watched it when I think it came out the 17th or something like that. I watched it that weekend. I started it up Saturday night. I was like, I'm going to watch, because I knew it was 4 hours. And it was about 10:30. And it's first chance I had to sit down and try to watch it. So I'm going to start it up now. I'll watch half of it. I'll finish it tomorrow. But I ended up plowing through, and I think I finished it up at 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And my wife hung with me for about an hour, and then it was getting close to midnight. She's like, I'm going to bed. And I said, okay, well, I'll probably, not finish the whole thing tonight. But yeah, I did. I just kept going like the big geek that I was. I wouldn't have done that if she's as into the superhero movies as I am. But she just kind of watches them with me usually. She's not usually a huge geek about it.
She's a trooper.
She is a trooper. And some of them she loves, especially on the Marvel side. She'll get really into some of them. And we watched the first 2 episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier last night, and she really got into that. So
cool.
Yeah, I love, and I'm not making fun of her. It's just cute. Somebody will walk by and she'll be like, was that? And she'll name somebody from the DC comics. She's like, was that the Flash just walked by? I'm like, no, baby, that's DC. This is a Marvel movie. So, yeah, that happened 2 or 3 times last night. So, but it's cute. I'm not making fun of her. You know how it is when
not at all.
Yeah, when you watch a movie with a non-comic geek. So, and folks, I have to say right now that Michael and I will be dropping spoilers on Zack Snyder's Justice League. There's no way to have a good discussion about it without some spoilers. So just be aware that once we really dig into Justice League, that there will be spoilers. So, and I know not everybody has HBO Max and all that. I think HBO Max is a fantastic service. I'm very impressed with it. Now,
Absolutely.
they're proud of their service. It's the more expensive streaming service out there, but there is a tremendous amount of stuff on there. I mean, I did the little try us out for 2 weeks or 30 days or whatever for free worked on me, because I'm like, I got to keep my subscription because there's too much good stuff on here. It's a tremendous amount of good content on HBO Max.
And a lot of the good stuff hasn't even shown up yet. We're going to have Godzilla versus King Kong in like a week. Yeah,
and then Mortal Kombat and the backlog or the they have tons of HBO series, movies. I sound like I'm doing a commercial for HBO Max, but I do think it's really good service. You got a tremendous amount of DC animated and live action shows and movies. So, but anyway, the point I was going to make was, I think HBO Max is worth subscribing to. You can go join it for free, give it the free trial, and check out the Snyder Cut. If that's what you want to do. And they know they take a risk when they do those free trials. So it's not like you're doing anything wrong or illegal or anything like that. So
not at all.
So, I checked the whole thing out, and then I went and watched the theatrical cut again because I wanted to contrast my memories of it versus the actual thing and see where the movies intersect and where they don't and all that. So I'm going to, and if you want to join in on this, feel free. I'm going to recap briefly what we talked about in 2017.
Yeah, you not for nothing. Remind me.
Yeah. Okay. So what we talked about in 2017 was that for the most part we enjoyed the movie. We felt that neither of us really liked Zack Snyder. Like, he's a good filmmaker, but we didn't really like his vision and tone for the main DC Universe storytelling, which I still feel that way. Like, I like his movies, but I have to see them as Elseworlds because they don't feel like the right tone for the mainstream DC Universe.
Genuinely, if you don't mind.
Right.
My observation as far as that goes, and this applies to the current Zack Snyder movie versus the Justice League.
Right. I see what you did there. Justice League. I did. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if you boil it down to the crucible, this is the thing. It's the Justice League version, the theatrical version, versus the Snyder Cut version. The Justice League was just more fun.
Right. It was a fun comic booky movie.
It was. And not for nothing, and this is genuinely the biggest major gripe I have about the Snyder Cut is, okay, it was good, but I didn't have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would say
4
it had.
hours I sat here and watched this thing, and I really didn't have a lot of fun.
Right, and yeah, we'll get more into that. I think it was a strong movie, much stronger than I expected. I expected a 4-hour sprawling mess, to be quite honest. I did. I just expected this big 4-hour sprawling train wreck that I had to watch as a geek. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But I was like, no, this is a pretty strong movie. But yeah, it's not fun. It's good. It's entertaining, but it's not fun. And I want my primary DC mainstream storytelling movies to be more fun. That was kind of where we landed when we were talking about the theatrical version. Was that, you were like, I can see the seams where Joss Whedon put his stuff in because that's the stuff that I had fun with and enjoyed. And, my final take on it was a good movie. And I thought it was a move in the right direction for the tone of DCEU. And one of the things I said, and at the time, both you and Zach were like, yes, we agree, was that the mid-credit scene they did where you have Flash and Superman about to race.
Yeah.
Captured and condensed and distilled in one scene everything that had been missing from the Zack Snyder movies. It was just a fun, just a cool scene that is pleasing to both your average moviegoer and your comic book lover. Now, that being said, I still like the theatrical version. I don't know if I like it because I think it's a good movie or just because I'm a comic book nerd and I like to see the Justice League together, whatever, but I've watched it several times and I've enjoyed it every time I've watched it. Now, I think it's a little rough and uneven, but how can that not be when you have two different directors? But
Right.
The numbers, if you're curious about the numbers on Rotten Tomatoes,
Okay.
I want you to take a guess. So we've got the Justice League, the Joss Whedon version,
Yeah.
which had extensive reshoots. He did not just edit together from Zack Snyder's stuff. I mean, he reshot a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he put his own fingerprints on his version, absolutely.
Yeah, up to and including they completely rescored it. So I've got a little note to talk about that later. But okay, so where do you think right now on Rotten Tomatoes, where do you think Joss Whedon's Justice League is setting?
Oh, 73%?
40%.
Really?
Which I think I don't think that's fair, but they aggregate all the different critics. I didn't think it was anywhere near that bad. It was at least average.
No.
Now, Zack Snyder's Justice League, where do you think that's setting?
Oh, man. Okay, well, that changes my answer. 53?
Nope, 73%.
Really?
Yeah, so Joss Whedon's Justice League is setting at 40%, which that's rotten. It's got the little green splat. And then Zack Snyder's Justice League is tracking at 73%, which I think is higher than any of his other two movies, Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman. So that's where the critical consensus is on it right now. That,
okay.
Yeah, the critics liked it a lot more than the Justice League, or than, Joss Whedon's Justice League. So that surprised me that there's that much of a difference. But maybe the critics are responding, because it's got gravitas and it, you know what I mean? It's got whatever.
I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's that much of a difference between the movies, but who am I to argue with Rotten Tomatoes? Right?
Well, between the Justice League and the Snyder Cut, and we don't necessarily per se need to go into specifics, if you will. I mean, those are in fact two different, very similar, but very, very different movies.
They are different movies, and that's another reason why I think that people should see the Snyder Cut. It's not like your typical director's cut where you just get more footage.
No.
There is a multitude of differences in it, despite just the additional footage. And I've got a list of things that I've noted down that I want to go through with you here to get your thoughts on them. Before we go any further, I did want to mention, in fact, this makes an appearance in the Snyder Cut, but it's very sad whether people like Zack Snyder or not. I think he's a very good filmmaker, even if I don't agree with the tone of all of his movies. His daughter committed suicide during his work on Zack Snyder's Justice League, during his work on Justice League. So he left and to deal with that tragedy in his life, and that's why Joss Whedon came in. And he's been, as part of the Release the Snyder Cut movement, there has been a lot of money raised for the AFSP. So I wanted to give a shout out to that. There's even, I don't know if you caught, you're usually really good at catching stuff in movies, Mike, but there's a scene right after, Barry Allen says, "What's your superpower?" And Bruce Wayne says, "I'm rich," and they drive off in the car.
Yeah.
Did you notice the billboard?
No.
Okay, the billboard was, said, "You're not alone," and it featured the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So I'm sure that was in there on purpose to, support anti-suicide efforts, which has obviously become near and dear to Zack Snyder's heart. And the Release the Snyder Cut movement, as part of Release the Snyder Cut, the hashtag movement, has raised $500,000 for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So I'm going to put that link in the show notes. And if that's something that is near to somebody's heart, they can help that way. It's not just that, hey, cool, we got the Snyder Cut, but they're also genuinely helping the anti-suicide resources that are out there. And I think that is tremendously cool.
No, that's phenomenal.
All right, I went, as I as I was watching the Snyder Cut, and then as I was watching the Justice League, which I love. I hadn't heard that before. I was making notes that I wanted to, remember to mention or think about or whatever. So I'm going to go through those. But, before we do any of that, if you've loaded any powder you've loaded, feel free to share it.
Well, let's just go through your stuff step by step. And if I have a comment, then I will chime in if you don't mind.
Right. But Michael Brown's nutshell, help. I'm in a nutshell review is it was an interesting movie, but you didn't have fun. Is that correct? Is that where you're at? Okay.
Kind of where I'm at with it. Right. Yeah.
Fair enough. And I can see that.
Don't get me wrong. It's a good movie.
Yeah. ...
Yeah,
it's a good movie. ... Yeah, but let's just start referring to it as the Dr. Zhivago of superhero movies. Let's just go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Even though I think Dr. Zhivago was like 5 hours or something, but it's the Dr. Zhivago of superhero movies. And it's done very well, but it's heavy and it's full of gravitas. And, it's not a fun 4-color, bang pow spandex type experience, which a lot of us summed up. He put Superman in the black suit, right? That's the tone he's going for.
Yeah.
But that made a lot of people happy to see Superman in the black suit. And it did surprise me that at the end, when he's running down the alley and he opens his shirt, he's still in the black suit.
He is.
Yeah, which I thought that was interesting. So, Zack Snyder is definitely making a statement with that. Okay. First thing I want to mention, the road to get here is ridiculous. For about a year, I collected every time a Snyder Cut hashtag blog post or article or something came up, I collected it, had an Evernote folder note or whatever. I was dropping it all in there because I was kicking around just doing a blog post on here's all the discussion going on the Snyder Cut. And at the time, I assumed we would never see the Snyder Cut, right? But I was, I thought this is a fascinating movement among the fans, but we're never going to see it. How wrong was I? But it's interesting, if I ever get around to doing this blog post, it's interesting how the discussion shifted. For a long time, Warner Brothers, DC, whoever was saying there is no Snyder Cut. Even if you put everything together that Zack Snyder filmed, that Joss Whedon had to work with, there's no Snyder Cut. There's no possible way you could ever have a Snyder Cut. I think Jason Momoa was the lone voice in the wilderness at that time saying, I've seen it and it's good. Yeah. He's like, I've seen it and it's good. But everything else, I've got article after article after article with, I think even Danny Elfman, who scored Joss Whedon's version, Zack Snyder was working with Junkie XL to score the movie. When Joss Whedon came in, he got rid of Junkie XL and brought in Danny Elfman. And Danny Elfman was like, there's no way you could make a movie out of this. And then just all these statements. There's no way it could possibly happen. And then all of a sudden, over the past, not that long ago, within the past few months, they're like, oh yeah, we're getting a Snyder Cut. And then boom, we got the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
So it just, literally, I'm like, what was going on behind the scenes? Because somebody somewhere had to be lying. Somebody didn't want it acknowledged that there could be a Snyder Cut. Because there was too strong...
I genuinely think it was the studio.
Yeah, because they didn't want to compete with what they already put out there or something. I don't know. But, a truthful statement would be, hey, all the stuff's there, but respectfully, we don't think it'll ever be put together into a cut. But, they were saying black and white, no whole, no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no possible way there could ever be a Snyder Cut. And... I guess it kind of shows the power of streaming over just in demand, right? Because they needed compelling content for HBO Max, and they knew. Now, I'm not behind the scenes. Maybe there's some other way we could have gotten the Snyder Cut, but without HBO Max, I don't think that we would have gotten the Snyder Cut.
I don't disagree.
Right.
First of all, not for nothing, and I don't know if you've investigated this. But there are actually 2 versions of the Snyder Cut on HBO Max. There's a black and white version
Is the black and white version out now?
movie.
I knew it was coming. Is it already available?
Yeah, it's out right
Okay.
now, man.
Well, you know what I got to do now?
It's watching it black and white.
Yeah, baby. You know they did the same thing with Logan. Have you ever watched the black and white version of Logan?
No, I did not. And to be fair, and I'm going to call it this just because it is, the Clerks version movies.
I'm not getting the reference. Lay that one on me.
Clerks was in black and white.
Oh, that's right. That is right. I totally, yeah. Okay, so the Clerks version of Logan and the Snyder Cut. I knew that it was coming in black and white, but I didn't know that it was already available. So that's good. I have to go watch it now. I mean, I'm that comic movie nerd that I have to watch it all.
Well, when I saw it was available on HBO Max in the black and white version, I was like, oh, man. You mean I gotta sit and watch this? Because I've seen it twice.
you I love this. It was a good movie, but it wasn't a fun movie.
8 hours of my life has been spent watching this movie.
So you watched it twice. See, that's what I love about Geeks. We're like, it's an okay movie. I didn't have fun with it. I've sat through every second of it twice.
Well, I wanted to make sure.
Yeah. No, and I get the make sure thing. Let me make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not for nothing. It's 4 hours. Well, if on my first round through, what if I watch it the second time? I'm like, wait.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you make
that the first time around. No,
yes.
It was exactly the same.
So you didn't make any new connections. All right. That's cool when you watch something a second time and you're like, oh, I didn't even catch all that. But anyway, all right. So my point is, as much as I'm glad that we liked, or that we got the Snyder Cut, there is some, I can point at WB, DC, whoever, and there's absolutely points where we can say liar, liar, pants on fire. So,
okay, yeah.
I mean, if I would, I'll probably do this at some point. I'll post all those links and you can read through and see the progression and the changes. I mean, I got like 30 links on this stuff. And the first like 20, if not more, are nope, couldn't happen. No way, not ever. No way. There's no way. Then HBO Max comes along and, proprietary, unique, compelling content is what a streaming service lives or dies by, and boom, suddenly we get the Snyder Cut. But it's been in the works. There was something like the composer worked on the new score for like 9 months. So this has been in the works for a while. Okay, next thought I had. You'll remember that we got chapters with subheadings.
Yeah.
Right. It made me wonder, I wonder if they kicked around releasing this as a miniseries instead of one big movie. Because it's certainly long enough you could have made a miniseries out of it.
You could have cut it in half.
Yeah. But I wonder...
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it actually lent itself, because how like WandaVision's a miniseries, Falcon and Winter Soldier. I mean, I think they could have made this a miniseries. I wonder if they... or, I don't know if you remember... what was the Quentin Tarantino thing that came out on Netflix? It had Samuel L. Jackson and Kurt Russell, and they were holed up in the cabin. And they did a movie version of it, or you could watch the miniseries and get more content. And, I wonder if they kicked anything like that around for... it was just a thought I had. Like, I think I could have watched this as a miniseries and enjoyed it, on the same level. Speaking of 4 hours... This did not, now I don't know what a second run through would feel like, but it did not feel like watching a 4-hour movie to me. I did not feel like, let's hurry up and get this over. Here we go. I mean, I felt like I watched about a 2.5 hour movie once it was said and done as far as like my mental fatigue. And I've heard other people say the same thing like on Twitter and everything. So on your first watch through, were you like, whoa, that was 4 hours? Or did you feel like, whoa, where'd the time go?
The second one, I was like, okay, Well, looking at what time it was when I started and looking at what time it was when I finished it, I was like, well,
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's how I was. I was like, whoa, I can keep going. I could have kept going, honestly. So,
yeah.
Which I think that indicates, again, it may have not been fun like Joss Whedon, but I think that's very indicative that it was good. Right? It pulled me along. I was into it. I was all about it. And I thought it was a very good movie. It's hard to say whether it's superior to Joss Whedon's or not, because like you said, they're different movies. So it's really hard to say if this is superior or not. But it's definitely got its own stuff going on. Another thing I thought was really interesting, because Zack Snyder really was hammering home the point that Superman dying changed everything and that they needed him back. So I thought it was interesting that at the beginning, which the movies start completely different. The Justice League starts with that little video clip where the boys are interviewing Superman for their blog, which I thought was a wonderful little scene. And then Snyder Cut starts. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may.
Yeah.
That was fun.
It was very fun. Yeah, we talked about that on our show in 2017, that it was fun. Yeah. Whereas Zack Snyder's Justice League opens with the end of the battle with Doomsday, and Superman's death cry literally echoes out in sound waves and ties everything together. Like it causes stuff to happen in Atlantis. It causes stuff to happen in Paradise or Themyscira. It causes everywhere there's a mother box. It causes stuff to happen. So it's like, he's tying together that Superman dying is setting a lot of stuff off.
That's what woke the mother box.
That's what woke the mother boxes. Now in Joss Whedon's, they decided to call the mother boxes. They have this explanation that the mother boxes didn't call Steppenwolf until after the Kryptonian was dead, but there wasn't any of that. His death actually woke them up. There wasn't any of that stuff. Now, when Joss Whedon's Justice League, there was a lot more emphasis on Superman dying took hope away from the world, right? There was nastiness in the streets and people weren't being as nice to each other and all of that. Whereas Zack Snyder was like, the only way that you're going to beat Steppenwolf is with a Kryptonian. So we got to bring the Kryptonian back. So it wasn't, even though the world was mourning, it wasn't thematically so much about the hope that Superman represents. Even though, they like Bruce Wayne was like, I want to bring him back. I did something wrong and, all that stuff. So now here's something I thought was really interesting. And they did a lot of this in the movie. In Zack Snyder's version, Steppenwolf's armor was completely different and very intricate. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was moving and it looked very technological and futuristic. It had little, I don't even know how do you describe that, where those little fibers would constantly kind of tick around and stuff like that. Yeah, and then the armor, the theatrical version armor, it's very dull, almost like Middle Ages looking or something. So that's the level of the differences in these movies. It's not just newer scenes or whatever. I mean, they've redone the special effects. And you've seen it twice now. I feel like Steppenwolf's face looked a little different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like
that is a different actor.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I did not know that. They had two different actors for the I did not know that. I'm
almost positive it's a different actor.
So it turns out that it's not a different actor. Both versions of the movie use, and I'm going to say this wrong, it's Ciaran Hinds. It's C-I-A-R-A with an apostrophe over it, or a accent, in Hinds, H-I-N-D-S. in both, but the Snyder cut did alter his appearance and voice. And I mean, to me, it even seems like the animation of Steppenwolf's face is different. But anyway, easy to understand why you might think it's two different actors. And now, back to the show. Well, the face seemed more relatable. Like, I don't know.
One?
Like, I felt Steppenwolf. Now, he's not a good guy, don't get me wrong. But
No, he is not.
I felt that Steppenwolf got a lot more depth and motivation in the Zack Snyder cut. Like, I almost kind of related to him. Like I don't want him to win, but I kind of feel bad for him.
Yeah, well, to be fair, in the Snyder cut, there was a bit more backstory.
A lot more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot more. One of my big problems with the Joss Whedon Justice League was that the main villain was Steppenwolf, and other than I think maybe a mention of the fourth world, that was it. Steppenwolf was the destroyer of worlds, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Steppenwolf is not compelling enough to me. Like, if you're putting the Justice League on the table, put it all on the table. Come out with Darkseid. And so that was one of my things. It was like, not that Steppenwolf was necessarily a bad villain, but they're just, why have him be the big baddie and the big threat when you're dealing with the Justice League here? And of course, the Zack Snyder cut led with Darkseid. And everything that Steppenwolf was doing was to get back in Darkseid's good graces.
Yeah. In the theatrical version, in the Justice League version,
Yes, sir.
Darkseid's name is mentioned once.
I know they mentioned the fourth world. I can't remember if they mentioned his name or not.
They do mention his name once, but that's it.
Yeah, and that was a disappointment to me. Because again, I mean, lay it out there. Like if you need the Justice League to be the tentpole movie for the entire DCEU, bring in Darkseid. Go big, go long. But anyway, so the Snyder cut. Let's go ahead and talk about this now since it's come up. That the whole Lord of the Rings battle scene, I always think of it as the big Tolkien battle scene.
Yeah.
It was completely redone. A lot of the same beats were hit, but they were fighting Darkseid and not Steppenwolf. And it was a younger Darkseid, but it was still Darkseid. Yeah. They seeded an extra thing in the Zack Snyder version, which I thought was very interesting, which was why, if the superheroes kick Steppenwolf's butt that hard, why is Apocalypse going to keep showing interest in Earth? Well, they seeded that Earth has the anti-life equation.
Correct.
Which is Darkseid is like, that's his white whale. That's his obsession. Is the anti-life equation. He got his butt kicked however many thousands of years ago when the gods and the Atlanteans and the humans and the Green Lantern and all that were fighting at the beginning. And they gave a lot better understanding of why are these, because the three like wizard kind of guys came down with the mother boxes, and they were doing like, we're going to join them right now and we're going to convert this Earth to our will and all that. And I just thought it was a much better, because it's exposition, right? They're setting up all this exposition, like why is all this happening now and how is it tied into the past? And I thought Zack Snyder's big battle scene that set everything up was better.
Okay.
Did you have any, like, if you had to pick one or the other, or do you have any opinion or?
Well, to be fair, I mean, and this about me, I should think, I very, very much like Darkseid being included in the whole backstory situation. And not for nothing, he just thought Earth was yet another planet to be taken over. He didn't even know about the anti-life at that point.
Right.
When Steppenwolf found the anti-life equation, it's on now. Okay.
Right. Yeah, there's no way the Darkseid's ever going to lose sight of Earth now.
Even at the very end, and again, since you gave all the spoiler warnings already, at the very end of the Snyder cut, Darkseid turns to Desaad because Desaad's like, okay, that's where it is.
Right.
What are we going to do?
Right.
What's your next move? And Darkseid is like, we're going to literally fly there and get it.
Yeah, he basically said something along the lines of like, marshal everything. We're going to Earth. So,
yeah.
And how excited I got one of those super great geek spine tingle moments when Desaad shows up, when Steppenwolf calls him on the phone, essentially, and Desaad shows up like in the hologram. Or I was like, oh yes, this is what I wanted. It's Desaad, you know. And then when he's then all of a sudden Darkseid in another scene shows up on the call, and Steppenwolf was like, holy crap, it's you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That was so great. Yeah. I'll tell you, I loved the battle scene. I loved that. I loved watching the God of War unleash on Darkseid. I thought that was a great scene.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the God of War was, and it's not, is it Ares in the DC Comics?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So he was the big baddie in the first Wonder Woman movie.
Yes,
but yet, when it comes to everybody banding together and defending Earth, he's the one who rolls up on Darkseid. And I freaking loved that. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, not for nothing. That was actually very cool.
Now, here's my only complaint of how of that scene and how they set everything up. And again, I just loved it when Ares was like, "Yeah, this is my planet," and you know, just tore into Darkseid. But the one thing I thought they did, storytelling for people who don't already know how amazingly dangerous and horrible Darkseid is, you know, don't show him getting owned that completely. Because then, you know, people who don't know the comics history are like, what's the big deal? They beat him. So it's not that they just barely pushed him back. I mean, they owned him and he's being pulled onto the ship, like bleeding and all of that stuff. So it's kind of like, you know, the first Dungeons & Dragons movie way back in the day. I'm not saying it's a great movie or anything like that, but most of the movie is around how powerful and awe-inspiring dragons are because there's this rod that can control dragons. But they kill a dragon in the very first scene of the movie. So it kind of takes away, you know, like, well, these dragons are super powerful. And I kind of feel the same thing when Darkseid got whooped that hard. I mean, he got owned. You know, it's not like they pushed him through the boom tube right before it was going to close. You know, I mean, they owned him. And, you know, So anyway, I counted now, Zack Snyder's cut is R-rated.
Yeah.
I counted 3 F-bombs. And I know that a PG-13 movie is usually allowed at least one. I didn't really see much else in there that would have made it rated R. So what are your thoughts on it being rated R?
It was the violence.
Okay.
Genuinely. I feel that was part of it.
Well, that scene with Steppenwolf at the end, where not only do they beat him, but Wonder Woman says, "Oh, I'm also going to chop his head off to make a point." You know, I'm sure that contributed a little bit.
Yeah. Dismemberment usually does.
Yeah. Well, right.
I mean, I was just saying, that was a bit, and the whole, not for nothing, the whole situation with him just showing up and waylaying even more Amazons.
Oh yeah,
than was shown in the Justice League.
I thought the scene in Zack Snyder's cut was far superior because they trapped him in that big stone building and then crashed it down the cliff. And then they're like, are they dead? And then, you know, him and his parademons come out of the smoke and dust. And I thought that was far superior.
Yeah.
So another note I made here, even scenes that were the same or very similar to the theatrical version got a little bit more color, like a few more seconds here and there. There was a lot
like
more.
What?
Well, there's a lot of, I'd have to go back and count. There's a lot of little scenes that only get like a few extra seconds here and there. But, you know, one scene that stands out to me is when Bruce Wayne goes to that remote village to talk to Arthur Curry.
Yeah.
You get basically the same conversation, but it's expanded on a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you get more of a sense of Aquaman's connection, and and like that woman that sings when Aquaman swims off, you're like, well, that must be his lover, What did you think of the 4:3 ratio versus widescreen?
I'm fine with it. I get it. I was okay.
Yeah. For me personally, now I thought at the first, my first knee-jerk reaction when I heard it was going to be 4:3 ratio instead of widescreen I was very disappointed when I heard that. I was like, what? How do you watch a movie like that? 4:3. And I assumed that it was studio meddling or maybe the amount of footage that was left. They had to make it 4:3 to make it all work or something. But I went and read an article and it said that was Zack Snyder's preference from the beginning. Because he feels that superhero action usually happens horizontally over vertically. And he was filming it for IMAX.
Well, so, I just took it as this is the IMAX ratio.
Right, and that's what it is. Yeah.
We're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, it's the IMAX. But he also went into some philosophical stuff about superhero action and stuff like that. I gotta be honest, after a few minutes, I completely stopped noticing that it was 4:3. I noticed it at first, and then after a while, I just didn't even notice, and I enjoyed the movie just as much as if it would have been widescreen. All right, on to, I've seen a lot of comments on this. I noticed it, but I didn't really notice it. It didn't bother me. What did you think about the amount of slow motion?
Okay.
I knew you'd be all over this one.
I did not care for a lot of the slow motion. There are two things, and you and I talked about this before the show. There are two things that I could have easily done with less of, and that would have been the amount of slow-mo. I mean, take the slow-mo out, you get yourself 15 minutes back. Now it's only a 3-hour, 45-minute movie.
Now, are you including when Flash is using his superpowers and it's in slow-mo?
I'm not quite counting that. I mean, to be fair, that completely seemed like a very, very good excuse to include more slow-mo.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
So, in other words, you're in favor of less slow-mo.
Absolutely.
Okay. I didn't really notice it until people started talking about it. I know there's a lot of slow-mo in it, especially like when the Flash is running, but it just didn't pull me out of the movie. But evidently it did a lot of people because somebody, there's always these, one of the reasons I love social media, even though it gets bagged on for a lot of reasons, is people out there have a lot of time on their hands. And they'll share stuff like somebody went out and figured it out. And they're like, according to their estimations, 10% of the movie is in slow-mo. And I was like, wow. So, it just didn't. And then they didn't say which scene it was, but they said there's a slow-mo scene within a slow-mo scene. So it's already a slow-mo scene and then it goes into more slow-mo for some reason. So I don't know. I don't know what scene that was. I'm guessing it was something to do with the Flash, but I don't know.
Again, not for nothing. And genuinely, this is a Zack Snyder thing.
Yeah, he loves some slow mo. Loves him some slow mo.
He does love himself some slow mo. And the other thing is the frequent use of a little bit of cringy music. I am including, but I'm not just talking about the Icelandic girl.
Yeah, singing. Yeah.
As Aquaman swims away. But there are moments,
There was a lot of mournful female dirge kind of singing.
Yeah.
I had my subtitles. I usually watch movies with the subtitles on these days. And they called it something like Mournful Ancient Dirge or something like that. And that happened a lot. It just adds the background ambiance music.
Yeah, and that is a contributing factor to the fact that the movie itself, per se, wasn't necessarily fun.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole different tone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a completely different tone.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about that. I've got some notes here on the music. So let's talk about that a little bit. So,
okay, go on.
Zack Snyder originally, back in 2016, 2017, whenever it was all originally being done, he had Tom Holkenborg, a.k.a. Junkie XL. That's who was scoring the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
Now, Joss Whedon came along, and I don't know why. Maybe it was for tone. I don't know why. He brought in Danny Elfman, who has scored a metric butt ton of movies, including scoring a lot of superhero movies.
Yeah.
In my mind, most famously for the original Batman.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different feel. Yeah, because how you do color in a movie, the cinematography, the music, the sound design, all works together for how you feel while you're watching the movie. And music and sound-wise, it's quite different. One of the scenes that sticks out to me the most was I had mentioned in our 2017 show, and it still is one of my favorite scenes from the Joss Whedon Justice League, when Aquaman saves that guy, goes and drops him off in the bar, grabs the whiskey, and he's walking down the pier or the dock, and Icky Thump by the White Stripes is playing. And I love Heavy Metal Aquaman. I do. I'm not always a big fan of major changes and designs to characters, established characters, but I love frickin' Heavy Metal Aquaman, and that was like a perfect scene.
And when he sees the Parademon blood.
Right. And see, here's a lot of little stuff that's different between Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
Joss Whedon weaves everything around the appearance of the parademons and the loss of hope because of Superman. Because that scene where where Batman finds that criminal and dangles him off the building to get fear so that the parademon will come. And then he wrestles with the parademon and figures out that it reacts to sound. That's nowhere in the Zack Snyder thing. That's something so that whole parademon sound, reacting to sound, and the Batmobile emitting the sound to get parademons to chase him at the end, that's all Joss Whedon. And he also changes that boat scene. In Joss Whedon's version, that boat scene was caused by a parademon crashing out of the sky or something like that. And in the Zack Snyder cut, Aquaman's like, "You're an idiot. You should have stayed out of the storm." And then he goes in. So it has nothing to do with parademon. He doesn't see the parademon blood. So Joss Whedon weaves an underlying narrative that's different. In this whole parademons react to fear thing and swarm over Steppenwolf at the end, that's completely Joss Whedon. Because, of course, Superman and Wonder Woman literally beat Steppenwolf to death. And then toss him through the portal. I love that scene. That's straight out of the comic books, where Darkseid's looking through the portal at Earth and the whole Justice League's just staring back at him. I freaking loved that.
Straight through the boom tube, baby.
Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. But anyway, so the music's quite different. And Tom Holkenborg, a.k.a. Junkie XL, came back and rescored the Snyder Cut. I got an article I'll put in the show notes where he says he worked alone in his studio for 8 months during the pandemic.
Wow.
To score it. Yeah. So again, I love the Icky Thump music when I think I preferred some of the sound design and soundtrack that Joss Whedon did. Even though I understand what Zack Snyder was going for with the emotional gravitas and all that. I just want to say gravitas today. You want to say go ahead and say it, Mike. Let me hear you say gravitas.
Well, not for nothing, man. That's a really good word to use when describing this film.
Yeah, there's a lot of gravitas. I want to go watch it again tonight. After my family goes to bed, I'm probably going to watch the black and white version. Okay. I thought it was cool because one of the Atlantis got kind of shortchanged in Joss Whedon's version. And I like that we got to see Vulko, Willem Dafoe as Vulko. Yeah. And there was a little bit more with Mira. That was cool. Of course, we got to see Desaad. I got so excited when I saw it. I got, every now and then one of these comic book moments makes your inner 12 or 13-year-old just jump around inside you. And when Desaad, when Desaad popped up, that happened with me. Did you catch the Kilowog cameo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's during the nightmare. It's either a hallucination or a vision of the future, and Kilowog has been owned by evil Superman. It's a blink and you'll miss it. So if people didn't catch it, the next time, I can't remember. Do you remember exactly where in the movie it happens? But it's got Superman sort of in silhouette floating over like a blasted landscape, and in the foreground is Kilowog's body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when it happens, but Kilowog, of course, is a very popular Green Lantern. All right. Speaking of, did you see this tweet stream that Ryan Reynolds did where he live tweeted watching the Green Lantern movie for the first time?
No.
Yeah, because he's panned it, right? Even though he was in it, and I have not followed the tweet stream, but evidently he sat down, watched the movie for the first time all the way through, and live tweeted it. And from what I understand is he came away like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So I think it's a good action superhero movie. I think as a Green Lantern movie, it could have been a lot better. Sit back and eat some popcorn and watch Power Constructs. I can handle it. So, and of course we have the HBO Max is doing a Green Lantern TV series, which,
Green Lantern Corps.
The Green Lantern Corps, baby. So I'm a big Green Lantern nerd. I know you are. You're literally a card carrying Green Lantern nerd. So I feel not for nothing, but back in the day, when I say back in the day, I understand that we live in the future now, and this is 2021. But in the 90s, I on America Online comic book message boards, etc. I got into many a fight online. Yeah. No, you're hardcore. You were part of Hal's Emerald Advancement Team.
Yeah, Hal's Emerald Attack Force.
Was it Attack Force? I thought it was Advancement Team because you had the card. You had a card. You pulled it out of your wallet one time and showed it to me.
They were called Heat.
Well, and I'm with you. I mean, we're getting off topic here, so I'll kind of get us back here in a second. Sure. I was not against the Kyle Rayner stories. I thought they were fine. I was totally against what they did to Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps to get to the Kyle Rayner stories. It was, it was very disrespectful to, it was just outright disrespectful, to what they did. And there was, decades of people loving Green Lantern and the Green Lantern Corps. So, and I'm sure we're going to shake things up. I don't think they realized how much they shook it up.
Right.
Yeah. You literally had organized groups against you. So, but anyway, as Kyle Rayner as a character, it was absolutely interesting to see somebody like Gant that shows up and is like, you'll have to do hands him a ring, splits, and now you got a guy with a power ring and knows nothing about it. So from that point, it was interesting storytelling, but everything, the Coast City stuff and everything they did to the Corps and Hal was just wrong. But anyway, okay, let's move on.
Okay.
So
literally have an entire episode just on that. Justice League. We can talk about what happened with Green Lantern in the 90s.
Yeah, it was bad. It was very, like I said, it was powerful storytelling, but it was very disrespectful in a lot of ways to the fans. Yeah, I'm kind of looking around here, and this seems like as good a place as any for some show notes. So let's do that and just take a minute or two, and then we'll get back to our discussion on Zack Snyder's Justice League with Michael Brown. But first, show notes and links for each episode can be found at shaneplays.com. That's the website /blog for Shane Plays Geek Talk. That's shaneplays.com. Our last episode is archived on the blog, and that was Level Up Advanced 5e RPG Sneak Preview with my friend Russ Morrissey of Ian Publishing. And if you're into RPGs at all, I definitely urge you to check that out. It was a good show. The podcast does go out on the blog at shaneplays.com, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, Amazon Music, YouTube, and more. Yes, it goes on YouTube. It's just the audio, but you can find it on YouTube. And Shane Plays is also carried on sci-fi.radio. Sci-fi.radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi. That's SCIFI.radio. Go check them out. It's a 24/7 geek radio on the internet. It's great stuff. If you like Shane Plays Geek Talk and want to support it, there are a couple of ways. First of all, we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/Shane Plays, and you can support the show for as little as $1 an episode. Always appreciate the support. Shane Plays Geek Talk also has two Twitter accounts, and the reason I mention those in support at the same time is among cool news articles and other interesting things I share. Sometimes I'll share out affiliate links for like games and comics and ebooks, software from Humble Bundle. I also share out stuff that I don't make any money off of, like free games from the Epic Games Store and stuff from the Bundle of Holding and everything. It's just stuff that I think that people will find interesting in its own right, and sometimes maybe they can save some money and at the same time help out the show a little bit. The reason I have two Twitter accounts is one of them is just the meat and potatoes account. I only share announcements from the show, some news items, affiliate links, free stuff, that kind of thing. And that's at Shane Plays PR. So it's ShanePlaysPR. And then I have another Twitter account, which is much more active, and that's just Shane Plays. And that's where I just constantly tweet whatever comes onto my mind and into my fevered little fingers and into the keyboard or onto my phone. And I share the same news items and affiliate links on both accounts. But if you want more chat or more personal Shane kind of stuff, subscribe to Shane Plays. If you just want the meat and potatoes but still get the cool deals and that kind of thing, subscribe to Shane Plays PR. Don't want people to forget about my book with Matt Barton of Matt Chat. It's Dungeons and Desktops, The History of Computer Role-Playing Games, 2nd edition. You can go to the website at shaneplays.com or go search on Amazon or whatever, and you can find that book. If you're into computer role-playing games or the history of video games and that sort of thing, definitely check that book out. And last, I want to shout out to advertising partner Cursova Magazine. That's CIRSOVA Magazine. It's the magazine of thrilling adventure and daring suspense. And right now, issue number 6, spring 2021, is out. And that's got all kinds of cool stuff in it. Cursova, if you haven't heard me talk about it before, it's kind of like the pulp magazines of old. It's kind of carrying that torch. You get adventure fiction, you get sort of pulp fiction, you get fantasy, sci-fi. Right now they're reprinting Paul O'Connor's Bad Axe comic strip, which is extremely cool. So there's just a lot of really interesting stuff to check out in Cursova Magazine. Again, that's CIRSOVA Magazine, so check them out. And that's it for the show notes. I always appreciate people listening to the show, so let me take a moment and say thank you very much for listening. And let's get back to that discussion about Zack Snyder's Justice League with friend of the show and comedian Michael Brown. And also, drop me a line at either Shane at shaneplays.com or on Twitter at shaneplays, and let me know what were your thoughts on Zack Snyder's Justice League. I would love to hear them. Okay, so I think the answer is yes here, but I want your take on it.
Go on.
I love the extra scenes that we got with Flash and Cyborg. I wish we'd have gotten some of that stuff in Joss Whedon's version, but as you were saying in our show in 2017, for some reason, the powers that be at WB laid down the law it has to be 2 hours, and he wouldn't let him go past 2 hours, so he had to cut a lot of stuff. Okay, so they introduced Flash. He's trying to get a job. A car wreck happens. He runs out and saves the girl in the car.
Yeah.
And with as much time as they spent on her, I'm thinking that's Iris.
It is Iris.
Okay, it's confirmed Iris?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that was a great scene.
I did too. Really, really did.
Yeah, and there was good, even though Iris and Barry don't exchange a word during that scene. I thought there was really good chemistry with them.
Yes.
It was very good. So, spoilers again. There's a car wreck, and Barry runs out in the middle of a job interview, saves her, looks at her, doesn't say a word. Obviously, something goes on between them when they're looking at each other. And then he takes off and goes back to the job interview. And then you don't see Iris anymore. But I thought that was a really good setup. I definitely hope that they continue that in the Flash movie that's coming.
That would be nice if we saw her show up again. And not for nothing, just that and that alone, for me, would somewhat set the Snyder Cut fully in the DCEU.
Just to have that Iris scene? Well,
yeah,
I wonder
if you're going to have Iris in the Flash movie,
yeah,
and have that Iris in the Flash movie, then that means, by extrapolation, the Snyder Cut is in fact in DCEU canon, because that's a bit up in the air right now.
Well, officially they're saying it's non-canon. I mean, you got some pretty big differences. Like in the Josh Whedon version, they very clearly show Silas Stone alive at the end, and then in the Snyder Cuts, Cyborg's dad dies, and it's a major part of the movie. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they deal with that. But again, you got Flash. The upcoming Flash movie is Flashpoint. So throw it in and make a stew. And let's see what we get. I think you even called this 3 years ago when we were talking about the history of the DC or the future of the DCEU. You were like, they have carte blanche, however you say that. Yeah. They have a blank check. They're doing Flashpoint. They can reset the DC universe however they want moving forward.
Absolutely. It's a tabula rasa.
Right, exactly. So we'll see what they do. And speaking of extra scenes, I like the extra scenes we got with Barry Allen. I liked I'll tell you the character that probably got shortchanged the most in the Justice League is Cyborg. I
don't disagree.
Yeah, he got shortchanged. Not only the character, but I can't remember his name, the guy, Ray Fisher. You don't get any clue of his acting chops from Josh Whedon's version. I saw a lot more of that actor, both in Human Guys and as Cyborg in the Snyder Cut. And they also set him up as super powerful. I mean, he could basically own the world at any moment whenever he wants to. And they don't even hint at that, really, in the theatrical version. That he can access stuff and take over machines, and he figures out who Bruce and Diana are, and he hears his name mentioned and all that. But I mean, they set him up like his dad is like, look, Victor, you can own the financial systems of the world. You could launch every nuclear missile. You could do anything you want because the world's interconnected, and you can own all of that.
Yes.
So they show him around doing little Robin Hood stuff, like a single mom or something needing money and can't get money, and all of a sudden her bank account goes up to like $100,000 and stuff like that. So, yeah. But I just thought that a lot of the stuff we got with Cyborg in the Snyder Cut made me a lot more interested in that character.
Well, I'm with you on that because they just flat out showed a bit more. They gave a bit more depth to Cyborg.
A lot more.
And I genuinely think that was important.
I think so too, because when in the Justice League version, and it's a stereotype. I'm not trying to get into racially charged stuff, but it's a stereotype of the angry younger black man, right? And I'm not saying it's a fair stereotype, but it's a stereotype in a lot of entertainment. And the first time you meet Cyborg in the Justice League from Joss Whedon, that's exactly what he is. You don't know why he's so angry. You don't know anything. And I mean,
in the Snyder Cut version, he is literally he is on top of being a cyborg. Before he was a cyborg, he was a football star. He was the quarterback of GCU, and that's not nothing. And number two, it is hammered over the head that he is clearly a genius.
Yeah, they say that. Like, right, they come right out and say, you were a genius, or you are a genius. Yeah. And what emotionally he had to go through in the Snyder Cut to make it through to the end and defeat Steppenwolf and thereby Darkseid by proxy, he really has to show a lot more strength of character. Like his dad literally, his dad dies, and it's not just a throwaway, oh, your dad's died. I mean, it's like, this is really wrenching him, and he has to run point on one of the most important parts of the plan to defeat Steppenwolf. And everyone's like, are you sure you could do it? And he's like, I'll do it, So I really came out of the Snyder Cut really much more into Cyborg.
Yeah.
And again, I thought Ray Fisher got a lot more chances because when I got done with the theatrical cut, I was like, Ray Fisher, who's that? I couldn't even tell you. But after watching this, like, I would recognize Ray Fisher now as an actor, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I was, I'm sure he's thrilled. But I've heard that he may not be playing Cyborg in future stuff. So I don't know. I don't know what all that's going on. Now, I couldn't tell. Now, I definitely know that Steppenwolf's armor design in the Snyder Cut was tremendously more intricate. Yeah. Tremendously. I mean, complete different armor design, really. Even when it's the exact same.
Genuinely, I feel a completely different character.
Right. He almost was a completely different character. So, and even in scenes where they're one for one, they still redid his armor. So, and I thought it looked better. I thought it looked cooler. Like I said, I was much more into Steppenwolf in the Snyder Cut. I thought it was a much better portrayal of a villain, both visually and motivation and what he's doing. He seemed even more like, I'm like, well, this guy is scary. But did you happen to notice? I couldn't tell, but was Cyborg more intricate in the Snyder Cut, or was it the same? Could you tell?
Was Cyborg?
Yeah, was his special effects, cyborg components, were they more intricate like Steppenwolf's? They were. Okay, I thought they were, but I wasn't positive.
There was 100% more to it. I mean, I can think of at least two things off the top of my head that Cyborg had differently in the Snyder Cut version. First of all, when he would activate his thrusters and fly, there was more than one moment where he would do a full face mask.
The face mask. I forgot about the face mask. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on more than one occasion, he would bust out with like 2 extra arms.
Yep. I forgot about that. In fact, when he's fighting Steppenwolf, an extra arm pops out of his back and he starts wailing on Steppenwolf's head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Forgotten about that. But I was thinking more like the actual, when he's just walking around as Cyborg, I couldn't tell if that was more intricate. Because the Justice League version, to be fair, his cyborg components when he's just walking around were pretty intricate. They weren't just like flat metal or anything like that. So,
right.
Okay, I have to mention this. Mentioned it in our show 3 years ago, but I got to mention it again. In both the theatrical version and in the Snyder Cut, it totally bugs me that the Atlanteans talk in air pockets underwater. I'm like, why are you talking in it? Yeah, what is up with this?
Again, Justice League happened, and then Aquaman happened.
Right.
And all that stuff was addressed / fit in the Aquaman movie.
I need to go say, I enjoyed Aquaman. I own Aquaman, but I've only seen it once, so I need to go back and watch it again. I remember enjoying it.
Absolutely need to go back and watch it again. It's on HBO Max right now. Just don't even think out there.
I just need to invest the time and watch it again. I remember enjoying it. I liked it a lot. I was like, the DC movies are continuing to go in the right direction. Yeah,
and this is just from me to you. And I'm not necessarily, well, I am bragging. You, first of all, you already know how big an Aquaman fan I am.
You're probably the biggest Aquaman fan I've ever met, and you've been an Aquaman fan since I've known you.
Yeah, I've been an Aquaman fan since the early 70s.
Right. That's hardcore, dude.
Because literally one of the first comic books that was ever bought for me by my mom was an Adventure Comics, DC Adventure Comics comic book, which was a Aquaman comic book. So one of the first comic books I ever read in my life was an Aquaman comic book. So there's that. Okay.
Right.
That being said, the speaking underwater bit,
Right.
that was addressed in the movie.
Yeah, I need to watch Aquaman again. My wife really enjoyed it. That was the ones that she didn't just watch it and endure it. She really enjoyed it. So we need to sit down and watch that again.
Yeah. And so that's a thing. And number two, and this is just, I'm just pointing this out, it made more money than any Batman movie ever had.
Yeah, it did really well. I mean, Aquaman, as people who read comic books and we're into Super Friends, we've always loved Aquaman, but as the general public goes, he's probably a C-list character, or more.
They think that, but he's not. He rules.
Yeah,
2/3 of the planet.
No, I love Aquaman. I've grown to love him.
Yeah.
More and more. I think here's a lot of the storytelling that has brought me more into the Aquaman fold. One, I think, even though it's a radical departure from the Aquaman that I know, I really like Jason Momoa's Aquaman. I really like it, even though it's a departure from the Arthur Curry that I've known. The other Arthur Curry interpretation that I probably liked the best was Peter David's back in the 90s. Really liked. Yeah. That was a great run on Aquaman. I like story. There's storytelling like Flashpoint. There's some Elseworlds. There's some other stuff where Superman's not around for whatever reason. And when Superman's not around, Aquaman becomes the alpha. It really lets him shine. And Aquaman in Flashpoint, Aquaman was like the bad dude you didn't want to mess with. And there's been other storytelling like that as well, where Aquaman, where it reveals he's super powerful and strong and has a lot going for him. But when he's in the middle of the Justice League, you don't always notice it because you're looking at like Superman to being the big gun or whatever. But Aquaman is a big gun. Well, he's tough. He's strong. He's smart. He has an army. He can. Yeah. He could basically fly over 2/3 of the world. And I'll tell you, I liked Peter David's run on Aquaman, but I think my favorite run I've ever read was, and I think I may have mentioned this to you before, was when they did Rebirth, Dan Abnett wrote Aquaman for like 50 issues.
Yeah.
And I was so hardcore into Aquaman. I loved everything they did with Aquaman and Atlantis and Mera and Volca. It was amazing. And they had an arc in there, which you'd probably love. You know the Shaggy Man, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Shaggy Man is a big unstoppable force of nature. Shaggy Man would give Superman a hard time. And it was a 2 or 3 issue arc where Aquaman had to go toe to toe with Shaggy Man. And it was really good. But anyway, the point is Aquaman's a bad dude, and he's earned the storytelling of Aquaman has put me more in his camp over the past, several years. We're used to it as like, yeah, he's neat, he's in the Justice League or whatever. All right. But I will acknowledge you publicly as the largest, biggest Aquaman fan I've ever known. And you've never wavered on it.
No,
you love you some Aquaman.
I have spent hours and hours of my life defending Aquaman before Jason Momoa came along and gave him the level of legitimacy that he has.
Yeah. No, I think that people think of Aquaman as bad to the bone now. So
yeah.
But yeah, because he's like, and he's a warrior like Diana is a warrior. His eyes sparkle when he gets in the middle of a fight, at least in the theatrical versions. Yeah. So, okay, moving on. We love Aquaman. And the speaking in air pockets was addressed in the Aquaman movie. I need to go back and watch again. All right, another note I had here. There was a scene that was cut from the theatrical version, that was in the Snyder cut that I loved very much. There's a scene where they're rescuing the hostages out of the underwater, tunnels or whatever, Stryker's Island, and like Steppenwolf or something blasts the corner of a building, and a bunch of debris starts coming down towards the hostages, and the Flash blocks all the debris, and you see little flash moments of his silhouette over and over and over. And I just thought that looked so cool. Do you know the scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish that would have made the theatrical version, because that was a very cool Flash moment.
That was a very good Flash moment.
Yeah, and it was also, I liked in the theatrical version when the Flash was like, look, you guys are used to this stuff. I've never even fought anybody. I've just kind of pushed somebody. This is all Joss Whedon. None of this is in the Snyder cut. And Batman's like, just save one. And I liked that. I thought it was a good moment for Batman
that was a full-on Joss Whedon inclusion of that.
Yes.
Because that was not in the Snyder cut.
Not at all. And I liked that moment. But I loved in the Snyder cut when Flash unleashes and pushes that parademon in the back with his speed force, and it just rockets forward and like splatters or whatever. So, I liked that. I liked Flash's abilities, or how he was using them, better in the Snyder cut. I liked how they did Flash and Barry Allen in both movies. He's a high point for me. All right.
Yeah.
So here's another thing that I wrote a note on, and feel free to throw your own notes in there at any time. I thought in the theatrical version that the thinking, I'm not talking about the process they used to bring Superman back with the mother box and all of that. I'm talking about the thinking process they got to get to the conclusion that they wanted to try it. Okay. It felt very rushed and non-intuitive to me in the theatrical version. Like, oh, we got a mother box. Oh, it's a change engine. Oh, well, let's bring back Superman. And it just felt like a huge, in fact, it took me out of the movie the first time I saw it. I was like, that's just too much of a leap all of a sudden. But the discussion that they have in the Snyder cut, once they have Cyborg's mother box, felt much more natural and intuitive to where they got to that they wanted to try to bring him back. And it just, I just thought it was it breathed better or something like that.
I don't disagree.
And, also, again, I mentioned before, I'll point it again, in the Snyder cut, they're trying to bring Superman back as a big gun. They need him physically, powerfully to take out Steppenwolf. Whereas there's more of an angle on the world needs Superman for hope in the Joss Whedon version. But like in the Snyder cut, Batman's like, I need the biggest gun I could get. We got to have him. And there's more of in the Joss Whedon version, there's more of a disagreement between Batman and Wonder Woman over should we do this or not.
Yeah.
One of the expanded scenes and extra scenes and all that I thought much improved over the theatrical version was all the extra stuff leading up to going inside the Kryptonian ship and reviving Superman. Like, they expanded on that greatly.
Yeah.
They came up with that fake alarm to clear everybody out. Silas realized that it was fake, but then saw Cyborg was involved and authorized it. All of that stuff. I thought that really added a lot to Cyborg and his father's relationship. Plus, it just seemed more realistic to me because in the theatrical version, they just stroll into the Kryptonian ship. But in this one, they had to come up with that. Like, how are we actually getting in there again? So, and the digging up Superman's grave scene was completely different. The conversation between Flash and Cyborg was different. And then you had that really great conversation with Aquaman and Wonder Woman at the truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, they were talking about the differences in their peoples and then that shared common, phrase and all that. I thought that was superior to the theatrical version. So
I don't disagree.
What did you think of in the theatrical version when they revive Superman, bring him back? Flash goes to the end of the hallway. Cyborg gives him a countdown, Flash runs, touches the mother box, Superman wakes up.
Yeah.
It was much expanded in the theatrical version. What did you think of the differences?
I thought it was more expanded in the Snyder Cut version.
That's what I mean. Yeah, if I confuse that, theatrical version was very straightforward meat and potatoes, where there was a lot more nuance and discussion and hints of ominous. This is not a good thing to do in the Snyder Cut.
Right. In the Snyder Cut, he even mentions like when I run and I approach the speed of light, that's when I have a significant electrical charge.
Right.
To get out. And
right.
None of that was in the theatrical version at all.
Well, you had that, so and then of course, Barry's ability to affect time as he closes light speed, of course, plays at the end. Because at the end, they lose. And then Barry, kind of hearkening back to the Superman 2 or Superman 1, like reverses time a little bit to give him a chance. Yeah. I was like that. I was like, how can I not think of, flying reverse around the Earth to reverse time a little bit on that scene. But it's still, again, it gave Flash a big moment. But there was also all this, like when Cyborg connects into the Kryptonian computer, the ship is like, don't do this. Don't do this. Terrible idea.
Yeah.
Don't do this. And then it even goes so far as to say, after they wake Superman up, it says something like future timeline locked or something like that. So it's making all these just big red arrows pointing here that this was actually really probably a bad thing to do, which I'm sure plays into the nightmare, right? The vision of the horrible future somehow.
The fact that Superman was brought back, the whole nightmare scenario,
right,
would not have happened the way it happened. Because if Lois hadn't died the way she died, and Darkseid putting his hand on Superman's shoulder, essentially recruiting him to his.
That was such a powerful scene, like that little flash moment. Yeah, where you see Darkseid put his hand on Superman's shoulder. Because that's what, in the comics, Darkseid's wanted that forever.
Yeah.
He's wanted the Kryptonian working for him. So
absolutely.
But anyway, they did what they did. Like, we got to stop Steppenwolf. Dealing with, the future is tricky because, well, if they hadn't stopped Steppenwolf, then the whole Earth would be subjugated. So it's like, what do? You can't win. Anyway, I thought it was really good. I thought the expanded version of the Snyder Cut, when they, everything they went through in that scene, including the please don't do this, the computer's practically begging them, Barry playing more of a role as far as,
having his role a bit expanded, a little more fleshed out, if you will.
All right. Next question.
Go on.
All right. In the comics, now the black suit looks cool. I'm not disputing whether the black suit looks cool. Black suit looks cool. Black Superman suit. In the comics, they told you why he was wearing the black suit, because it was part of him recharging his powers and rejuvenating. Because when he came back to life, he had to wear that because he wasn't fully powered to go face, it
absorbed more solar energy.
Right. So, plus it looked cool. I mean, honestly, him running around, it just looked cool.
Yeah.
But they gave no narrative reason whatsoever in the Snyder Cut to why he chose the black suit.
No, they did not.
He looked at it, because they have that scene where I love when they were carrying the casket down the corridor in that ship, and the ship was it was displaying all these different uniforms he could choose from, including a battle armor. And they were like, oh, the ship recognizes him. So I love that. But then when he went back to the ship, he's like, what, he's obviously trying to decide what he's going to do or whatever, or he's just looking for a suit. And then he sees you see that he sees a suit that he likes. And then suddenly he's in the black suit. And then again, he's still in it at the end when he does the famous Superman shirt rip. And you see that he's still in the black suit. I don't know, like narratively, are they just trying to show the mourning that he did die? Or, I mean, what do you think that they're trying to say with that?
I don't know if they're absolutely trying to say anything with that. I think he's just still wearing it because he's back from having been stabbed through the chest with Doomsday.
Okay, fair enough. It wasn't, I mean, I could see it for him wearing it to go fight Steppenwolf first time I'm back, but the fact that Zack Snyder chose to show that he was still wearing it moving forward, I thought was kind of interesting. So I think it would have been nice, narratively for there to be some sort of mention that, because he goes up in the black suit and he soaks up the sun rays before he goes and fights Steppenwolf. So, I personally think it would have been nice if there would have been some mention that it was helping with that. But what do I know? I don't
disagree with that either. That alone would have been like 2 lines from somebody.
Right.
Would have been nice.
Right.
Just to give us a little bit of exposition on that.
Right. No, I'm with you. Like I said, it looked cool, but
he couldn't do that in slow motion or in a cringy song, I guess. So
yeah, so that got lost in that 10%. Yeah. All right. So in the first Avengers movie, you had that one quick slow motion money shot of the Avengers all being together. There's a scene, now it doesn't include Superman, but you and I talked 3 years ago or whenever that was about that Justice League didn't have that money shot. But Zack Snyder did it when they're fighting in the fake Chernobyl area and they're about to crash in to Steppenwolf's after they fought parademons for a while, but now they're all a team and they're about to crash in. Did you notice the quick little slow motion money shot?
Of the whole team?
Yeah.
To be honest, I genuinely do not recall that right now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not there at all. It probably is. And all that means is, I got to watch this 4-hour movie again.
Well, just go see that one part. Like after they've run around and fought the parademons for a while, and now they're like, okay, we've got to get Cyborg in there so that he can do his thing. And Barry, go get ready. Right before that, they're all together. Now, Superman's not there yet. But everybody else is. And there's that, how like the Avengers, they did that one quick little slow-mo pan shot, like that. It's the Avengers. Man. Yeah, it's in there real quick. And I noticed that. I was like, that Zack Snyder actually put that in there. I figured that'd be something that Joss Whedon would have done. So you did get that. Another thing I liked about the Snyder cut, especially the battle at the end, was you finally got to see a couple of scenes where Batman was cool. Because in the theatrical version, there's no moments where you're like, oh, it's Batman. Of course, Batman v Superman, there's some very cool Batman scenes, but there's not really that. There's more Bruce Wayne scenes in the theatrical version. And Batman's kind of, secondary. But in the big battle at the end of the Snyder cut, Batman is Batman a couple of times. And I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh, it's freaking Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really sweet. We already talked about the trident stab plus the decapitation of Steppenwolf, so we already talked about that. Couple other things here. They tease like somebody who got almost completely cut from the theatrical version, but plays fairly prominently in the Snyder cut is the Ryan Choi character who's working with Silas Stone. And that is one of the Atoms. Ryan Choi is a later Atom in DC Comics.
Yes, he is. I had to point that out to my roommate. I was like, oh, by the way, that Ryan Choi guy, he's the Atom.
He's the Atom. Well, they even kind of hit the nail on the head a little harder after they say what his name is, because they're like, he works in nanotechnology.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, he was definitely seeding the Atom. Then, as long as we're talking about that, the other character that really surprised me with 2 different scenes was Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
Did that catch you off guard?
Well, it was spoiled for me before I saw it.
Okay.
So it didn't catch me off guard per se, but especially upon the second watching of it, and we got to that bit where Martian Manhunter is talking with Batman on his deck patio.
Well, you hear the sonic boom and you think it's Superman, and then it's Martian Manhunter who shows up.
Yeah. I don't mind Martian Manhunter being in there. I don't mind who Martian Manhunter was.
Yeah, he turns out to be that general.
Yeah.
Which that totally threw me for a loop. That he turned out to be the general. Yeah.
He evidently appears in Man of Steel.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's the general. He appears in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Because in Man of Steel, at the end, he's the general that Superman brings the drone to and throws it down and says, "You're not going to figure out where I hang my cape." And then in Batman v Superman, he's the general or the guy that Lois Lane corners in the bathroom to talk about that bullet she found.
He's a cabinet member.
Yeah.
He's a secretary.
Yeah. And then
of the president.
Yeah, that totally, it didn't throw me as much. Now, I'll tell you, they did the scene where Martha comes to Lois Lane. It was like, you got to get back to life and all that and da-da-da-da. I'm like, nice. Then she comes out the door and then turns into Martian Manhunter. I'm like, what the? I'm like pointing at my wife and she's not even there anymore. I'm like, did you see that?
Right.
And I'm like, what? It totally unexpected. I think I had heard that Martian Manhunter was in the movie, but that scene caught me off guard. Then he turns into that cabinet member. Or maybe he turns into the cabinet member and then Martian Manhunter. And I can't remember, but I was like, what? What? Yeah. So, but I gotta be honest. The scene at the end where Martian Manhunter flies to Bruce Wayne's house on the lake, it felt a little corny to me, honestly.
And again, I feel that was Zack Snyder just laying a bit of future movie ground.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I just thought it was weird to end the movie on Martian Manhunter and not Superman. But it just felt kind of corny, but I'm glad to see Martian Manhunter. I've been a big Martian Manhunter fan for a long time, and I like that he's in the Supergirl TV series. Go ahead.
All I was going to say was you can literally cut out all the scenes, the 2 or whatever it is, scenes of Martian Manhunter out of the Snyder Cut, and you're fine.
It makes no difference to the movie whatsoever. Yeah, it makes no difference to the movie whatsoever.
Not whatsoever. It absolutely makes zero impact on the entire movie at all.
Yeah, because you don't even, I mean, you could still have that strong Martha Kent and Lois Lane scene and just leave it assumed that it's, Martha Kent.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I think I already mentioned I love that stare down between Justice League and Darkseid at the end. That was such a great movie moment, but also a good comics moment. Did you catch? I'm sure you did. You usually catch all this stuff, man. Did you catch the Dark Knight Returns Batmobile and that one little scene where at the end with Batman standing on top of it?
Oh, the Bat Tank.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, that was straight up out of Dark Knight Returns. So that was some love. Okay, I've got a few notes on the theatrical version, but before we get into any of that, we got to briefly, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on the nightmare scene at the end when Bruce Wayne's having the nightmare and wakes up before Martian Manhunter. But just real quick, it's got Deathstroke in it. It's got Mira. It's basically Mad Max Justice League is basically what it is. With Batman, I know you had Deathstroke, you had Mira. I can't remember who else. Do you remember who was part of that posse?
Cyborg's in that.
Cyborg. And they're like in a, that hellish. And when we say nightmare, we mean Knight, nightmare, because they're playing on it's Batman having. And that's what everyone calls that scene. So it's sort of an Elseworlds within an Elseworlds, if you take Zack Snyder's movies as Elseworlds. Yeah. And they even say, there's a dialogue in that scene at the end where it was like, oh, you got to fix this alternate reality. How many of them can you mess up or something like that? There's that line.
That is Joker.
Joker. So that's what I want to focus in on. What did you think?
Okay.
What did you think of Jared Leto's Joker in that scene?
I'm fine with it. I'm okay with it. I very much think, well, first of all, I very much think that's an improved version of the Joker over what we got in
Suicide Squad. Yeah, the meth head Joker.
Yeah. And to be fair, for what it was, I didn't necessarily have a problem with that Joker, but I did think this was an improvement on the character.
Yeah, he was a ghastly kind of Joker. He was sort of, in fact, there's a couple of scenes where it's focusing on Bruce and the Joker's in the background and he's almost kind of out of focus and he almost looks like a ghost or something.
Mm-hmm.
With that big mouth and he just looks like a freakish, he's definitely ghastly and weird and, they need each other for whatever reason, but I liked it. I thought that the Suicide Squad Joker, I'm pretty forgiving on movies I want to have a good time. I don't want that Joker to be the main Joker running around, but I'm like, okay, if this is your little siloed Suicide Squad movie and that's your version of the Joker, I thought Jared Leto did a pretty good job. If you watch the version that has extra scenes in it from the theatrical version, I thought that the stuff between the Joker and Harley was very good. Especially,
So did I.
Yeah. So, and I love, I would die for you. Yeah. But would you live for me? I love that Bonnie and Clyde kind of dynamic there. But no, I thought ghastly future again, so much of this stuff, I have to see it as like an Elseworlds. I don't want that ghastly weird, or however he laughs, Joker, however that, he's like, that kind of weird laugh that he had. However that went. I don't want him as my main Joker. But if that's the Joker that's in the Nightmare version, I'm fine with that. And I did think that...
And that's all that was the Nightmare version of the character.
Right. And I did believe and buy in to all the chemistry between him and Batman. The back and forth that had so much hate and love and whatever just all mixed up in it and all that history. I bought into it that these characters love to loathe each other. There's something so strong in storytelling about two people that hate each other having to work together because there's a common goal. So, and like part of the Joker's appeal is the sudden but inevitable betrayal is coming. So there's that delicious anticipation of when that's coming. All right, I'm going to run super quick on the theatrical version. Here's some notes I made while I watched it. These I'm going to throw out there more than just try to go into discussion. But if you have anything that you want to add, feel free.
Thank you. Go on. I'm very interested in hearing this.
Okay, some of the stuff I've already mentioned.
Okay.
The theme is much more about the loss of hope in the world because of Superman's death rather than just the JL needs him to defeat Steppenwolf in the Unity. I already mentioned he also threaded all this stuff in there about parademons being involved and more stuff. The song choices were more popish. I got Snyder Cut is more classic and maudlin. I still think that the Icky Thump scene with Aquaman is superior. This was... at the scene with Wonder Woman at the beginning, they made it more about, this is him more tying stuff in with parademons and stuff. The terrorists in Zack Snyder's version are like Luddites. They just want to turn the clock back from like technology in the current version of the world. In the theatrical version, there's literally a line that's added where when Wonder Woman has the lasso around the guy and he says, well, sin has brought on this plague of aliens. So he's tying, Josh is beating that drum a little bit more. The theatrical version mentions new gods. Steppenwolf mentions the new gods at one point. The phrase isn't used in the Snyder Cut. They actually changed, in the Snyder Cut, some kid or something draws a sketch of a parademon. And it looks like a bat or a vampire. So people are like, oh, is that Batman? The sketch actually looks like a parademon, the theatrical version. But they still suspect Batman. Like they're like, oh, is that Batman? And I wish we would have gotten more. I can't remember. Is it J.K. Simmons, the guy that played Commissioner Gordon? I wish I love him and everything he does. I wish we'd have gotten more of him. I love that scene. Where it's like, how many of you are there? And they're like, not enough. And then they they pull the classic disappearing routine, and Flash is standing there, and he's like, did they just rude? And then he takes off. I love that scene. Okay. I don't know why they did this, but in the theatrical version with Joss Whedon's theatrical version, for some reason they changed the name of the prison where they rescued the hostages from to Braxton Island. Whereas in the Snyder Cut, it's Stryker's Island. And in the comics, it's always been Stryker's Island. It's basically the comic book version of, what's the prison nobody could ever escape? Alcatraz. But for some reason in the theatrical version, they called it Braxton Island. And I'm pretty sure that they added this effect in the theatrical version where Batman's voice is sort of deeper and more rumbly when he's in costume. They added like kind of a bass effect to the theatrical version where I didn't catch that in the Snyder Cut. So he's more Batman-y in the Snyder Cut. I mean, the theatrical version. The scene in the Batcave, or the kind of the warehouse where they discuss the mother box and the possibility of trying to bring Superman back, is very different. It's almost completely reshot.
Mm-hmm.
They hit some of the same beats, but the dialogue's different. What happens in the scene is different. It's a completely different scene. They still come to the same conclusion, but it's like completely reshot. You know, and you have that scene in the Snyder Cut where, you know, Cyborg even projects that holographic image of Superman, you know, when they're like standing around looking, deciding what to do. And it's just completely different. And, you know, in the theatrical version, Bruce and Diana get into an argument to the point where Diana, I don't remember if she shoves him, and he goes back several feet and bangs into some stuff because he brings up Steve Trevor. And I mean,
yeah, that was not in the Snyder Cut. Not
at all. I mean, there was discussion and disagreement, but there wasn't that. And then they have that scene in the theatrical version. They add a whole new scene with Bruce and Alfred right after that big discussion and decision, where Alfred's talking with him, and you know, Bruce is like, "We need him. He's more human than I am," and et cetera. And the world needs Superman, and the team needs Clark. That's not in the Snyder Cut. That's totally new for the theatrical version. And also the scene where Bruce and Diana talk. And she's like, you know, I don't want to be a leader because leaders get people killed and all of that stuff. That's new in the theatrical version. That's not in the Snyder Cut. I already mentioned
that's all Joss Whedon.
All Joss Whedon. And it feels very Joss Whedon. Also, you know, like we were talking about, Flash and Cyborg really got the short end of the stick in the theatrical version. But one thing that the theatrical version did that the Snyder Cut did not was it mentioned that Flash got hit by lightning. Right. So I don't think they go into that at all in the Snyder Cut.
At all.
In Joss Whedon's version, when Cyborg and now I do like the interplay with Flash and Cyborg in Joss Whedon's version better, when, like, you know, he's trying to fist bump and he's like, okay, we're not there yet and all that stuff. But when they're digging up the grave, somehow Flash mentions that he got hit by lightning. The theatrical version, the Justice League, whatever you want to call it, much less focused on the expanded relationship with Victor and his father, which I think is a mistake. It added, you know, a lot of emotional whatever to the movie. And then Silas Stone is shown alive at the end. And that's the quick notes that I took off the theatrical version. Another thing that was interesting to me, and we'll wrap on this, I was under the impression that the fight with Superman at the memorial, right after he wakes up and is revived or whatever, was substantially different in the Snyder Cut than it was in the theatrical version, including the time of day. I was under the impression that one of them was at night, one of them was at day, and all this other stuff. They, other than the Snyder Cut adding scenes and moments, it seemed like pretty much the same fight to me.
Well, it was. Yeah, it was the same fight, but I don't know. There were some differences. I mean, there just were.
Well, there was stuff added. There was the scene where Barry kind of accidentally jacked up Aquaman. There was some more fighting, I think, between Diana and Clark. Of course, Lois Lane shows up on her own.
Also, Alfred did not go get Lois.
Right. That's a major difference.
She was already there.
Right, because she was visiting his memorial every day. And she was bringing the police officer their coffee and stuff like that. Yeah, so she showed up on her own. And I think I remember on the Snyder Cut, there were a couple of tanks. Didn't they try to shoot him or something like that? Either I saw that or read that. I can't remember. But the fight itself, where you had, 3 or 4 of the main people like dogpile him, and then the Flash runs by, and then he tries to punch the Flash.
Well, Flash is running at super speed, and you see Superman. I mean, everything else is going in slow motion, but then you see Superman actually glance direction.
Yeah, which is one of my favorite scenes in both versions. Like, Superman is super. He's super. I don't know. I just, I thought that for some reason I had read or heard, I don't know. I just thought that the fight was going to be much different in tone and even time of day. And, I don't know. But
yeah. I fully feel, well, first of all, I'm in no way saying that one version is better than the other per se, but in the theatrical version, all the beats they were hitting, you were like, oh, okay, Bruce had a handle on this
right
from the beginning. And in the Snyder Cut version, it didn't necessarily look like Bruce had a quote unquote contingency plan.
Oh, he didn't. Yeah, he was Hail Marying.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was Hail Marying, and because Lois showed up, it turned out, for the best. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, good movie. Like I said, I enjoyed it as a comic book nerd. I enjoyed it as watching. I thought it was a very good movie. I thought that I'm glad that it happened so that people can see what, the effort and what Zack Snyder had done with it. And then, of course, Ray Fisher and the Flash characters getting much more scenes and showing what they did. And yeah, they are, I want to end on this note. They're different movies. They're similar, but different, like you pointed out.
Yeah.
There's significantly enough that they're not exactly the same story.
Absolutely. The entire story changes when the anti-life equation is entered in.
Which is
just is.
Yeah, is a perfect setup for future movies. I think that because Zack Snyder filmed the thing where, Lex Luthor is recruiting Deathstroke. And then, so that was used in the Joss Whedon version, but that wasn't Joss Whedon's idea. I think
but it was done differently in the Snyder version.
It was, yeah. The Snyder version, Lex Luthor is telling Deathstroke, I'll tell you who Batman is and all of that.
Yeah.
Whereas in the theatrical version, he's just saying, I think we need a league of our own. For teeing up more DC Extended Universe to come, I think the Snyder Cut did a better job of that.
Well, absolutely. It ended, to be fair, in a way, it ended with at least one or two incredible cliffhangers. Yeah. It all had to do with the new guys.
All right, well, I got to wrap this, but
okay.
Man, I really appreciate your time. Any final thoughts, last word on Snyder Cut?
And again, I didn't think it was a bad movie. It's fine. It's good. You're going to have to schedule yourself some time.
It's an investment.
To watch it. Unfortunately, I don't feel it needed to be 4 hours long, but it is. So that's fine.
Must there be a Superman? There is. That's the line from Batman v Superman when he's talking to that senator.
There is.
Must there be a Superman? There is. I liked it. I think we're getting the best of both worlds here, because I think at any time I can watch the theatrical version or the Zack Snyder version and be satisfied that I've seen an enjoyable movie. But again, the change in tones is quite... If you want more of a Marvel type experience, watch the theatrical version. If you want a deep emotional experience heavy with gravitas, and to be fair, some good comic book action, check out the Snyder Cut. So, and I think just for, if people are interested in movie making at all, this is a very rare and unique opportunity to see two different versions of the same movie with different directors.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's fascinating just to see, that, to give you more insight. Because how often do you get to see? Now, you'll get director's cuts where a director will, but to see two different directors, version of a movie, that's pretty rare, especially a big blockbuster like this. So, all right, Mike.
Absolutely.
Well, take care, man. I appreciate you again, and I hope you get up there on stage making people laugh very soon. Oh, wait a minute. I got the bad joke of the week. I got to lay it on you. Then you can go. All right.
Please.
Got to know the bad joke. So, the only weakness Superman has on the internet is...
Yes.
Cryptocurrency. And with that, I wish everybody well. Thanks everybody for listening to Shane Plays Geek Talk, and we will catch you next time. Take care.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.